All right, folks, it is November 26th, 2024, 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of people are getting ready for those Thanksgiving meals and those Thanksgiving gatherings and all along those lines. But there's a lot of things going on in the world. And we'll be talking about those here on World Edition. And of course, we've got a guest that'll be coming on talking about veterans' rights and things along those lines as well. But Israel has launched heavy strikes on Lebanon ahead of the Hezbollah ceasefire deal talks. So Israel ministers plan to vote on the Israel Hezbollah ceasefire deal, and that'll be taking place later today. But Israel is pounding Beirut and pushing deeper into Lebanon ahead of that expected ceasefire. So definitely it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the Middle East. And the world's oldest man dies at age 112 at a Southport care home in England. So definitely John Tenniswood died at the age of 112. So that is definitely a long life lived and all along those lines. And Imran Khan supporters breach lockdown in Pakistan's Islamabad. So Pakistan deploys army as deadly clashes erupt with Imran Khan supporters. So the capital on lockdown, internet shutdown, and protesters clashing with police. That's what's going on in Pakistan. So Pakistani troops killed as protesters stormed barricades demanding the release of jailed ex-prime minister Imran Khan. And Russia accelerates its advance in Ukraine's east. So Russia's offensive campaign assessment is still going on and all along those lines as Russia has expelled British diplomat for spying and summons ambassador. So definitely that's something going on as well as Moscow claims advance in the Ukraine's east has accelerated. Definitely that's something that is going on there in the European theater. So Israel strikes threaten Lebanon's archaeological treasures. So entire pride in ancient city sustains remaining residents amid Israeli destruction. So 34 Lebanese cultural properties placed under enhanced UNESCO protection. So definitely that's something that's going on is even history sometimes gets caught in the crossfire of these wars as well. And Lithuanian DHL plane crash could be sabotage, according to the German foreign minister. So German leaders are floating sabotage question in deadly DHL plane crash in Lithuania. So black boxes found as Lithuania begins the investigation into that deadly crash. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And early election results showing stuns Romania. So Romania's far-right pro-Russian alert spells trouble for the EU and NATO, according to folks that are in that area as well. So Romanian liberals back centrist presidential candidate after a hard right surge. So definitely we're seeing all kinds of political theater all over the world and all in that space. And Ukraine says Russian attack sets a new record for the number of drones used. So apparently Russia set a new drone attack record in overnight Ukraine barrage. So definitely that's something else that is going on in that part of the world as well. And the whole world is shaken as a Chabad rabbi was murdered in UAE, has been laid to rest in Israel. New York Times changed the headlines about murdered Dubai rabbi following public outcry. Call it for what it is what folks were saying on yesterday and all along those lines. So definitely a lot's going on in that space. And 8 Laos hostel staff were held over suspected methanol poisoning deaths. So Laos hostel staff detained after suspected methanol deaths. So that's something going on in that part of the world and all along those lines. And a South Korean man is convicted after binge eating to avoid military service. So South Korean courts convicted man for dodging the military draft by gaining weight. So definitely that's one way that folks can do it. So a South Korean man was convicted for deliberately gaining weight to evade military service. So definitely that's something that folks can pay attention to as well. And prosecutors are demanding a 20-year jail sentence for Dominique Pellicot. He's the one that's involved in that rape case in France and all along those lines. And some people are saying that the UN climate negotiations were a major bummer. There has been contentious COP29 deal shows climate cooperation fraying at the edge from definitely from Baku to the Amazon eyes on COP30 as COP29 apparently disappoints. So the UN Climate Summit ended in bitterness and accusations of betrayal. Now fears are growing for its future. And 16 are still, well, actually, they're saying, 16 still missing after a tourist boat sank in Egypt. Four bodies had been recovered from the capsized tourist yacht in the Red Sea. And it looks like there's definitely some folks that are still missing. And I'm seeing various estimations as to how many. And plastic waste is everywhere. Countries have trying to find a solution to that. So they're trying to find a way to curb the plastic pollution that is all out there and all in that space. And the fist fights in Serbia's parliament over awning collapse at a railroad station. So a brawl erupted in the Serbian parliament. We've got all kinds of contention in the U.S., but I don't know of any brawls as of yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen at some point, but definitely in Serbia's parliament, they were having fistfights in that area. And Iran's Khamenei calls for the death sentence for Israeli leaders, not arrest warrants. So Trump and Congress looking to put suffocating sanctions on kangaroo ICC over Netanyahu arrest warrant. So Ukraine threatened with emergency ban of arms exports to Israel after the ICC warrant. And the Philippine president and vice president clash in a feud that's testing an Asian democracy. So Philippines president slams the vice president's assassination plot. So definitely it looks like Philippines have summoned Vice President Duterte over threats to have Marcos killed. So definitely the Philippine president vows to fight back after an assassination threat by his estranged vice president. So lots going on all over the world and all in that space, including France's far right threatening to bring down the government over the planned budget. So Marine Le Pen might be about to wreck the Eurozone. So Marine Le Pen renews threats to back censure motion that could topple Barnier as prime minister. So like I said, there's stuff happening all over the world and all in that space, including a mosque temple spat. Why has India's Sampal exploded into violent clashes? So fear grips in the Indian city after deadly weekend clashes and conspiracy of hatred under the guise of mosque surveys, according to Jamaat Alamin Hind. So definitely it looks like lots going there, including a surge of gang violence in Haiti, which has led UN workers to flee. So like I said, lots going there, and we know a lot's going on in the U.S. too as we get ready to transition to a new president that's an old president. So Trump's 2020 election interference case dismissed following Jack Smith's request. So the judge has granted Jack Smith's request to dismiss the January 6 charges against Trump, and appeals drop in Florida Doc's case as well. So looks like Schiff on Smith's decision to dismiss Trump's case is calling it a serious mistake. So definitely it looks like that particular case has ended and all along those lines. And a disruptive Thanksgiving winter storm is coming with a side of the coldest air in a while. So looks like for some people, Thanksgiving forecast could be having rain, snow, and much colder air. I think it's supposed to even get a little bit colder here in North Carolina. And Trump's tariffs would be devastating to U.S. and Canada, according to an Ontario premier, and all along those lines. So S&P 500 futures are little change following Trump tariff plans, and Mexico hits back as Trump's tariffs threat shakes the market. So definitely it looks like there's still that vow of tariffs and all along those lines and all in that space. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes there. And the Menendez brothers listened to court hearing on phone as aunts testify on their behalf. Menendez brother aunt says Kitty knew about sex abuse and she makes passionate plea for the pair to go free. So she's trying to get them free and all along those lines. And an FBI special agent who had been charged with sexually assaulting two women was acquitted in the 2020 DC subway shooting and all along those lines, or at least he was acquitted. Now he's been arrested on sexual assault charges. So the FBI agent is accused of rapes 2 years after the Metro shooting acquittal. So he got off on one charge, and now we'll see what happens on this next charge and all along those lines. So like I said, lots going on, including Biden proposes Medicare and Medicaid cover costly weight loss drug for millions of obese Americans. So 7.4 million Americans could gain Medicare or Medicaid coverage for anti-obesity drugs under Biden's proposal. So Ozempic, Wegovy is covered by Medicare and Medicare under the Biden administration proposal for the anti-obesity GLP-1 drugs. So it looks like they're trying to get that covered and everything like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this all goes on. And Angela Merkel says she isn't ready to say sorry. And definitely there's conversation about regrets, feminism, and Trump's fascination with Putin. And that's key takeaways from Merkel's memoirs. And Germany's Merkel recalls Putin's power games and contrasts in U.S. presidents in her memoir. So Angela Merkel and the future of NATO under a second Trump term is something that folks will be paying attention to, as well as the fact that Biden, I think, has done a series of judge appointments, and we'll see how those go in his couple of months left in office and all along those lines. So definitely this will be interesting to see what goes on in that space, just like we have a gentleman, a first African-American cabinet member that has been picked to be the head of HUD and all along those lines. So housing and urban development and all in that way. And a social media influencer was arrested after filming herself getting ready to steal from the store using fake barcodes and all along that kind of way. So I'm going to bring in, got Jan from Marty with me. I've also got Rick Rosner and everything. So hopefully Jan can join us, because I know that Jan is hopefully with us, wanted to talk about the veterans' rights and what's going on in the veteran space and all along those lines. So Jan, how are you doing? And I know you want to talk about the situation with the veterans. I think you're off camera, but just definitely let us know what's going on with the veterans and all along those lines. Jan's trying to work that out, so we'll see if he can get on camera and all along those lines, or get to mic and everything in that space. But definitely there's a lot going on in the news, and hopefully Jan will join us shortly or come back shortly and all in that kind of way.
I can share something about veterans just to set up Jan. There are 18 million living veterans in the U.S., representing about 6% of the country's adult population. So wow. A ton of veterans, more veterans total than there are people in more than half of the U.S. states.
Yeah, and I know one thing he wanted to talk about was veteran rights, because he'd actually called me this morning and everything. So hopefully he'll come back in and be able to share what he's got going on in that space and along those lines and everything. As a matter of fact, I think he's with us now. Jan, how are you doing? I know one thing you wanted to talk about was veterans rights, and you are a veteran yourself, and Rick just shared some of the statistics about how many veterans there are. We just had Veterans Day not that long ago, and of course Thanksgiving is coming up. So share a little bit about your concern around veterans.
Yes, good morning to all, and happy early Thanksgiving. I served in the United States Navy from 1980 to 1983, actually July the 13th, 1980 and 1983. And actually, guys, my birthday falls on Veterans Day. I was born November 11th, 1960. So if anyone want to wish me happy birthday, you go right ahead. So I suffer from a disability I think y'all may be familiar with is bipolar. I'm 100%, and I get compensation for that. But I want to speak about how veterans across the United States, and mainly the United States, are scrutinized because of their disabilities. And it goes under the radar. Now, I want to briefly read you guys something. I'm not going to be long. It said military veterans are sometimes scrutinized because of their disabilities due to a combination of factors, including misconceptions about the nature of service-related disabilities, the complexity, the process of claiming VA benefits, public skepticism about the legitimacy of claims, and concerns about potential abuse of the system, leading to scrutiny when veterans attempt to assess the support they need for their service-related injuries or illnesses, which I think is false. And then the public perception, which is terrible. Some people may not fully understand the wide range of disabilities veterans can experience, leading to assumptions that veterans are exaggerating their condition claiming benefits they don't deserve, which is a constant with people across the world, especially here in the United States. I've attended many of functions, and I am a former vice chair and former chair of a political action committee called the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. And I presently, constantly, time for time, connect with the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services named Mark Benton. I talked along some of these issues. I had him as a guest speaker at one of my health forums here in Durham, who spoke about Medicaid. And I've had the state health director, who's presently the state health director, Dr. Elizabeth C. Tisson, to speak about Alzheimer's and dementia. So I want to get back briefly about how people scrutinize or stigmatize veterans. Like I stated earlier, I suffer from bipolar, but I have accomplished a lot. I sent Mark some documentation of me catching a guy that did armed robbery, robbed a black lady, white lady at church. And I'm the one that caught him, got a community service medal about it. And I'm a man with disability. I've ran for elected office at Durham County Soil and Water here. I finished fourth in that election after getting into the election 6 months after. So I'm a disabled veteran. I'm bringing this to your attention, reason being that veterans accomplish that they can still perform on a professional level, on any level in the workplace. So we're not trying to hide from the public about our disabilities, especially me, because I've accomplished so much. I just got in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That is where our host attended school at Marquette, Mark Lee. So I jokingly tease him. I worked for the campaign. I'm not going to drop no names of the campaign. I worked there from August the 20th and got back here in Durham from Milwaukee by Amtrak on November the 8th. So it was a great experience down there. Actually, I did boot camp in Chicago, where I went at when I was there having fun. So again, veterans, I feel we very scrutinized. It goes on the day. It goes on radars as well as civilians. And we don't realize there are people out there that suffer from the same thing veterans do when it comes to bipolar, high anxiety, PTSD, just to name a few. Catherine Zeta-Jones, Mariah Carey, Taraji P. Henson, all suffer from some type of depression slash bipolar. And it doesn't get, in the public until people of notoriety or something. So I've dealt with things. Actually, I was accused of something by DA before, and I'm not dropping any names, of something that was fabricated, but it went to court and I had a protective order against me. But it didn't keep me from running. I didn't let it keep me from achieving on a higher level. So I was able to achieve regardless of that. I didn't let it. My attitude is you don't let issues, circumstances, or situations define who you are. You define who you are, as everyone has issues, circumstances, and situations, but you don't let them define your character. And another one is I never let hurdles. I'm gonna be rich in just enough for me. You never. I don't see hurdles. I have to jump a roadblocks. I have to move, or walls I have to knock down. In my mind, they don't exist. So those are some of the things I carry with myself when people out to attack me as a veteran. As I figured, I just read to you some of the stigma. People are stigmatized veterans, and people don't want to talk about it across the United States, where I think is a disgrace, because we should be honored for protecting this country. And as far as benefits, I believe in working hard, but I don't believe all my veterans that suffer from disabilities mentally and physically. Everyone is not me, and I think some of them deserve things free almost, because we protected this country from harm. And people don't keep that in the back of their mind. So I'll leave it as that. I just wanted to share some things with you
Well,
guys about how I feel veterans are scrutinized, mistreated, and stigmatized here in the United States.
Well, I appreciate that, Jan, and everything. Just really quickly, because I also know that you worked in the military campaign. So, what was it like? I mean, not the military, but the political campaign. What was it like working for Kamala Harris there in Milwaukee? I know that you met some of the folks there that I am associated with, like Doc Rivers and others. But I was just wondering, what was it
Yeah,
like
Sammy
working on
Baldwin.
that? What was it like working on that campaign, and what was it like being involved in that campaign? And was it equally as devastating for those in Milwaukee as it was for those around the rest of the world when Trump won? So I just wanted your take on that work on the campaign.
I try to be cautious, Mark, about what party I represent because I represent really want to represent the people
Right.
when I'm down there, and everyone has their different issues. But it was great in the Central Zone. I was able to embrace peaceful culture. I think I was good on that because I ran for elected office. Being out in the public sector and private sector with congressmen, senators, people I worked with as political consultant like Sher Burkhead. I worked for a senator named Mike Wood. I was his main guy. And I also was a community engagement coordinator for a Republican lady that ran against Representative Valley Fouché named Courtney Gibbs, who's still my very good friend. So I look at people because of their issues and where they stand and how they can help people I consider that are oppressed and suffering from Medicaid and things of that. So when get back to your point, it was engaging, it was fulfillment, it was insightful. It opened my mind about people in the Central Zone and how they feel about politics in Milwaukee. That was my first rodeo, of course, because I kind of been around the United States. And like I said, I did basic training back in 1980 in Great Lakes, Illinois, which is now the only base training place for military Navy veterans. Used to be San Diego, Orlando, Florida, and Great Lakes, Illinois. So it was nice to be against near Lake Michigan again because I stayed there and had some lodging they had for us on the east part of Milwaukee. And it was a great experience. I would advise everyone if they want to go for vacation, if they want to, they love the cold weather because I left just before it started getting cold. But in my opinion, cold weather stabilizes germs, so it's good for me to have some air. It was great to be in Milwaukee. The campaign was great. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out for me. The results or the outcome didn't turn out for me like I expected them to. But I look at things, I put God, and if things aren't all right or they're not going where we feel they should go in the United States, let's leave it in God's hands, in my opinion, and He would bring light to everything.
It
So
makes a
All
lot
right,
of
so
sense.
30% of U.S. veterans have a service-related disability. That's 5.3 million veterans, or about one American adult in 50 that you'll just see on the street. My brother served in both Gulf Wars, had 70% disability, still functioned at a high level, still was able to serve as an officer and as a stand-up comedian. 10% of all veterans, 1.8 million, suffer from PTSD. So,
Yeah, that definitely
and
makes sense
so
to me.
one more thing is Trump talks a big game about his respect for veterans, but he has a long history of disrespecting those who served. So we'll see how it goes for them under a second Trump
Under
administration.
the second term and everything. Just really quickly along those same lines, because I know another issue, and I'd love to hear Sasha's thoughts about this, and even Jan, because this is another part of the world and everything. But one of the issues that we talked about is the rise, and I know I need to lose some weight as well, the rise in obesity here in the U.S., but apparently it's a rise around the world and everything. And there was a South Korean man that was convicted for deliberately gaining weight to evade military service in that area. So I just wanted anybody that wanted to jump in and talk about this rise in obesity. So I'll start with you, Rick, because I know that you follow a lot of these trends and everything.
I know somebody who put on weight so they would qualify for bariatric surgery where they shrink your stomach. But people don't have to do that anymore. With Ozempic, there's a lot of controversy, but I think Ozempic's going to be kind of a miracle drug where Americans, 70% of adult Americans, either overweight or obese. I think we're going to see that statistic drop year by year.
Yeah, and along those same lines, and maybe Jacoby wants to jump in this because I know he's got family in the medical field and all along those lines. But there is this notion that Ozempic and other weight loss drugs are going to be protected by some of the measures that Biden is putting in his last couple of months in office and everything. So, do you think that those items will stand the test of a Trump presidency, or will they be put in so strongly that Trump can't touch them and everything? Because I know that Biden is also putting in a series of judges as well that are now getting appointed in this last 2 months. So I just wanted your take on some of these Biden actions, including those around Ozempic and other weight loss.
Trump is extremely transactional. Trump is going to try and pressure them to pressure the different drug makers to pay him. If they pay him, they'll be protected. If they don't, they're going to have to, and he's going to try and make them bend the knee like he did with RFK Jr. When RFK Jr., remember, was supposedly against all these fast food places, but was taking a photo on a plane with Donald Trump eating McDonald's. So it's all about transactions to him. If if they bend the knee, they'll be okay. If they don't bend the knee, then he's going to try and shut them down, regardless whatever they do.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely the case in that sense.
On the highway.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. That'll be what could go on in that, because he's definitely a transactional president and everything. Hey, Sasha, just really quickly, because speaking of transactional, there was a person that was not the biggest fan of Trump in his first term. Apparently, she's written a memoir, and she's not the biggest fan even now, that being Angela Merkel and everything like that. And now people are wondering the fate of the EU under Trump and whether this will go on, and also the thoughts around tariffs and whether the tariffs will impact folks in our neighbors there where you are in Canada as well in Mexico. So I just wanted your take on the future of the EU as well as what's going on with the whole notion of the tariffs and all along those lines.
Well, this is a very sad situation for the whole Western world when there is a great threat of Russia and their satellites such as Iran, North Korea, their partner in crime, China. They are very aggressively attacking all positions of Western democracy. Trump is trying to disrupt, change, kill, and do other things that will not make US and Europe stronger, but will make them weaker as a result. It's already obvious that today no army in the world can have the war of attrition that Russia commands in Ukraine. No army in the world except Ukraine can withstand that in the long run. So Trump is the biggest threat to United States, to Western Europe, to all democracy in the world.
Yeah,
So the tariffs, which he announced yesterday, and
Yes.
some people think he's bluffing, but he wants a 25% tariff on all goods coming from Mexico and Canada, 10% from China. And, conservatives think he's a brilliant businessman. Liberals, maybe who know something, know that between 1985 and 2015, Trump lost more money than any other American. Now, some of that was probably a tax dodge. He went bankrupt. He declared losses, so he didn't have to pay taxes. But still, he's lost billions of dollars. He's not good at business. His professor, undergrad professor at Wharton, called him the dumbest student he's ever had.
Well, all of his businesses have crashed except for the hotels because they're hotels. It's hard to crash a hotel that bad. And then on top of that,
Chicago.
I mean, yeah, he's just he. If it wasn't for the TV, if he wasn't on TV and been written as this whole, hey, he's this great businessman on TV, yeah, the man would be flat broke, and everything else would have crashed. He is not a good businessman at all.
Wait a sec. He was broke by the year 2000. He lost all his father's money. He lost his money. He declared bankruptcy in casinos, and no U.S. bank would touch him. His net worth was minus $250 million. Okay, so we know what a brilliant businessman he is.
Okay, now that you guys are all done bashing, let's look at some facts. Fact is, the economy grew at a rate about 3%, the GDP during its 4 years of term. So the fact is that the Americans were better off. And so I know what you want to believe, but the evidence doesn't support that. But certainly dying to listen to Jacoby try to spin that one. Come on, Jacoby.
It's not actually.
Well, I can make a
You said-
point.
You
The
said
brother,
that,
he did not just make go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, Nick, you said that the economy grew at 3% or 3% GDP under Donald Trump. That's incorrect. It was actually a little bit lower. The actual economy, GDP wise, grew better under Joe Biden than it did under Donald Trump. The actual economy reached peaks above that 3% that you're talking about. The average was actually higher up under Joe Biden than it was up under Donald Trump. Actually, and even creating more jobs, even taking away the jobs that you're talking that people want to say, well, he brought back COVID jobs. Well, you cannot have it both ways. COVID happened. Donald Trump, under Donald Trump, these things happened. He lost those jobs. They're associated with Donald Trump. So again, we're not better off under Donald Trump. We're better off now by every economic measure. Even
We're not being better off in everything else.
Okay. Actually, the House was controlling by the Democrats. The time those checks came out during the COVID time, the House are the ones that passed those checks. Just Trump have to be the president to sign his name to them. These things I know, being in the politics, working with Republicans and Democrats, so I'm not being biased. He takes credit, like when Barack, he actually got that there because it was coming in for the years that he say that the economy gonna get stronger. And by the time he got out of office, Trump took credit for that. And it was a House that was at that time controlled by the Democrats. They the one that got those stimulus checks out. Furthermore, on veterans, Trump trying to cut our pay compensation. Of course, you all know as Medicare with Social Security. And then he talked ugly about John McCain, saying he wasn't a hero, and he depends on the military to protect the United States. Sounds something like hypocritical to me. So as far as the economy, you were correct, sir. The economy is 6 bankruptcies. He had his college not having accreditation and have to pay those people back. So people are blinded. Trump, he has a tremendous con game.
Hey, just really quickly, I had
Uh,
a question. I had a question.
Barron, who writes articles on this, disagrees with this panel. Okay, but then again, Barron's is looking at facts. What they're saying, which I think is quite interesting, it says Trump economy grew healthy 2 to 3% a year until the arrival of COVID. Then it fell 28%. But then you look at the stock market, it grew about 48%, and then Biden-Harris about 49%. So it was roughly the same. So even though everybody on this panel, except for me, demonizes Trump because they don't want to look at the facts. The fact is they run neck and neck. That's the way it is. Yeah.
That's true. If you break it down into the specifics, Trump had 2 medium to good, maybe even great years. The first 3 years were good with 3% growth, and then 2020 was the worst year in, I'd say, American history since 1862. It was bad. A lot of people died. A lot of businesses were shut down. And then Biden, he inherits some slow growth initially because we're digging our way out of COVID. He has the benefit of vast job growth because a lot of COVID jobs come back under Biden. Then he gets some decent growth in the last couple of years. But so
hold on. Wait. Real quick, Nick. Just real quick for you.
One more thing. Look at the stock market today. Trump announced his tariffs yesterday in a tweet on Truth Social, and the market's mixed. The Dow's down about 0.5%. The Nasdaq and the S&P are each up a fraction of a percent. So the market isn't freaking out. So people are speculating that maybe this is a bluff. The market isn't shitting its pants.
So real quick though, Nick, you point out this growth, and then Rick points out that it was only 2, maybe 3 years. The president, last I remember, is up there for 4 years.
I'm just repeating.
So what you're telling me in the first few years of this man's presidency, when we all agree, for example, Trump right now, when he goes into office, is going to benefit from at least a year before any of his economic policies actually take effect. So him benefiting in that first year of somebody else's policies is one thing. But then you're saying, okay, second year, Donald Trump had his policies come into play. But then you're forgetting, we're already down 3 years. Now you're talking about possibly 2 years where Donald Trump had a decent growth that was accounted to him. But then you're ignoring the last year where everything fell off the map based on what he did. So you can't really ignore. So then you're ignoring the fact that in Biden's first year, he had a bad economy that he's having to recover from. That was Trump's economy.
Counselor,
hold on a second. I want to get into it. Hold on a second.
To be guilty, and then let's figure out what the evidence is, rather than looking at the evidence.
A world situation as well, because it's a country that I know that at least soccer-wise, Sasha follows and everything, and I'm hoping Shaquille comes back because he has oftentimes talked about the center-left and the center-right and all along those lines. So even though you are not affiliated with this country that I'm getting ready to mention, I know that you followed their soccer team, which is Uruguay. I can't remember if you've ever visited the country or not, but yes, the leftist opposition candidate became the country's new president. So I just wanted your take on Uruguay and Uruguay's politics, because apparently their incumbent candidate conceded the tight presidential runoff to the center left challenger. So it looks like they're moving, instead of to the center right, they're moving to the center left. But I just wanted your take on Uruguay as a country, since I think that you had visited there and I've never been there.
Well, I visited Uruguay about 5 years ago, right before the COVID. And it's, I was there for 2 days. Don't want to sound like I'm an expert in this country, but what I saw, it was very well organized, peaceful, vibrant country, and they are authentically, they're very close to Argentina, much closer than Brazil, although a couple of 100 years ago there was a dispute between Argentina and Brazil who should own Uruguay, which is very small territory comparatively to both Argentina and Brazil. And the result was that Uruguay said that they don't want to be with either of two of them. They want to be independent country. And that's how they are for last over 200 years. In my opinion, the absolutely incredible example of Argentina should play well for Uruguay and its people, and most likely they would follow that model of development rather than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, That makes sense. That's what I was curious about and everything. Hey, Nick, I did have a question for you, and I was just wondering if this would work in our area because apparently in Mexico, which we know we were talking about with the tariffs, but they had a run on people that apparently want to run for Supreme Court seats and federal judges.
I'm gonna disappear because obviously you know what my comments.
No, I didn't, hold on a second, Shaquille. I didn't do that. I was giving.
I'm not having a go at you. I'm busy. I came on clearly because you guys were arguing about Donald Trump and the markets, and the second I've come on, you've changed the topic. So I'm going to go because I've got other things to do.
Shaquille,
it's okay. I'm not trying to tell you to go back to that topic. I've got things to do. The topics that you're bringing up now are of no real interest to me. I can't comment on Uruguayan soccer, and I'm not going to comment on the tariff. So, guys, it's okay. I can talk tomorrow. It's no problems. I've got things to do.
But I just want. All right.
Well, Nick, I was going to ask you about this 18,000 that apparently registered to run for Supreme Court seats and federal judges in Mexico's new judicial system, because they're also doing reforms in their area. So I guess you can just register to run, like apparently we can register to have jobs in the Trump administration, because I think Trump was doing something similar and everything. But what is your notion of this idea that you can just register to run to be a Supreme Court judge or have a federal judge? And of course, this is in Mexico, but maybe we should try that here in the U.S. Maybe that's what we should do for Congress, is have people register to run. So what is your take on this idea?
They have certain judicial positions are elective, as you know, Mark. The Court of Appeals in North Carolina, the state court, Supreme Court in North Carolina, they're all elected. They're not appointed.
Right.
The Supreme Court in the United States is an appointed position, as well as most federal district courts in Article 1 and Article 3 courts. But not all courts, even in the United States, are appointed. Some of them are elected positions. Yes, Richard.
I want to go back to tariffs for a second, where one thing we heard that during the first round of tariffs under Trump is that a ton of farmers committed suicide. 450 farmers, I think, committed suicide between 2014 and 2018. But then I read further, and last year in 2023, 50,000 Americans committed suicide, which is huge. That is, we freaked out about, the people, 100,000 people a year dying of COVID in the last couple of years. That's half of the COVID death rate, which is significant. So, I don't know if what's causing the suicide epidemic, but we have one, and I don't know if tariffs are going to raise the suicide rate the way they did among farmers the first time we had tariffs.
Well, I think the real problem with the farmers isn't the tariffs, it's the retaliatory tariffs that take place after the tariffs take place. Because like a chess game, the tariffs are move number one on the chessboard. No, I'm going to put 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. But then remember, the retaliatory tariffs that China goes, well, we import a lot of beef, cattle, and food products. We're not going to import it anymore. So the real question isn't the tariffs. The real question is, when the other countries respond, they put a retaliatory tariff. How is that going to affect the markets of these individual people? When you do go to the agricultural section, we do have a real problem here, and that is the vast amount of government subsidies that need to be pulled from the agricultural community. It's just way too much. And then I'm going to bash.
Speaking of government subsidies,
I need to bash the code on my way out the door. I always thought it was in the billions that they were giving away to the chip manufacturer. The recent article said no. Over the next 10 years, it's $1.2 trillion of giveaways to the chip manufacturers in the United States, which frankly don't deserve it, and we need to stop that.
But Jan brought up an interesting point earlier and everything, and I wanted him to go back to that because y'all both kind of alluded to it, which is this notion, whether it's farmers or whether it's veterans, of mental health and all along those lines. So we're saying that we need to cut down on the subsidies for farmers, but are we doing enough to address mental health needs, whether it's those of the veterans, whether those of the farmers, or just in general? So if anybody wants to jump into this conversation, how are we doing in terms of addressing the mental health needs of our citizens here in the United States and around North America?
We're not. There's really no good policy on it right now.
Well, we're not addressing it in a similar fashion where Nick just bashed the chip manufacturers, because many people don't see value in where these subsidies are going. Hence the reason why, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be hurt in this whole Doge thing, because they're going to pull grants. They're going to pull all these different things that affect particular areas that are being handled by the government that we don't really understand fully. For example, Nick, when you talk about the chip manufacturers, do you understand how much of the future is based on these chip manufacturers? And do you understand how much of just the US future around AI? This is why Google, Microsoft, Apple are all buying into the power consumption area in the nuclear power plants, because AI is on the way. You know what else they need? They need a lot of chips. NVIDIA, Sasha can rant and rave and tell you about how much NVIDIA stock jumped because of they're figuring out the GPU and being able to create these chips better than anybody else. So chip manufacturing is huge, and it actually is a big boom for every single facet of our society in the future. So being able to put subsidies there, get more companies, get more competition there, that lowers prices. It's the same thing if you're a similar fashion. If you look at what you're talking about, Mark, with Veterans Affairs and the mental health around that, dealing with that money will probably, and I hate to say it, because this is how transactional Trump is. He's going to pull a lot of those that veterans money away, which sucks, and it's going to harm our society, because many of those veterans, honestly, if we were to add more money into the Veterans Affairs, say for instance, we need teachers. Lo and behold, guess what? We need teachers. Do you know that we could actually put money in Veterans Affairs, offering those veterans a different job opportunity, maybe train them as teachers in the middle school, the early education classrooms, and raise them up, because veterans have a great moral stance to stand on in the first place from where they go and what they learn and what they have to go through. That could help teach our early childhood kids what to do, giving them that opportunity and moving them forward in a teaching fashion. Oh, lo and behold, hey, guess what? What if we need more people in the area of law, judges, or maybe even border security? Well, you know what? What can we do with our veterans who need positions? Hey, if we take that Veterans Affairs, work with mental health issues. I mean, it's just, we ignore what government is not a business. It is not a business. It is, if it is to be forced in the idea of a business, it's a non-profit business. But we're trying to think of this for-profit mentality that this area has to make money. We can't do that. These investments that we have to look into, we have to look at it at a different way of how it's actually going to affect society in a purposeful manner, and not, hey, how much money is it going to bring in?
Yeah, I was saying, just really quickly along those same lines, and this is for Sasha and Nick and everything. There is this notion, and it is being floated out there, speaking of things that are being done in the recess time, well, not the recess time, but the transition time that's going on now, as Biden is going out and Trump is coming in. So on yesterday, Peach and Blossom, which were the two turkeys, got their pardon, because that's like a White House tradition to pardon the turkeys and make sure that they are not on the dinner table and everything. So my question is, should he also pardon Trump before Trump comes into office? So what is our take on this?
That's nonsensical. Nobody's reasonable is going to suggest pardoning. Trump will pardon himself if he still needs to pardon himself for anything. But all the federal charges are being dropped,
right,
and the sentencing for his fraud conviction is being postponed till after he's done being president. So there's no pardoning necessary.
Makes sense. And apparently, what'd you say, Jan?
I was speaking about those. I don't know if this related about the assets. I think I'm using the correct term. Trying to get someone confirmed. What did you guys call that? Is it recess or assets?
Recess appointment, where you try to get them confirmed when out the when Congress isn't in session. So yes, recess appointments.
Yeah, when Congress is not in session. Okay. I did speak briefly to a senator named Floyd McKissick, but I didn't have his complete attention. He's a very dear friend of mine. So he was breaking it down to me, and my mind was really somewhere else at times. So I appreciate you guys sharing that with me.
No problem.
I don't think he has enough. I don't think Trump has enough senators on his side to have something like that happen, because you need a majority, and there are already, I don't know, probably 3-4 senators who've come out against Republican senators. All the Democratic senators are going to be against it.
Yeah, that definitely will be the case. Hey,
hold on. Before, let's not paint this happy picture.
Okay.
Even though you got the few Republican senators that have come out against it, remember Elon Musk said if you don't do what Donald Trump says, he's going to primary you and he's going to pay for that primary challenger. So when we talked about the bending of the knee, and he's going to try and force through everything he can, and there's a lot of if they're going to basically shift more power to the presidency, we have to still keep an eye on it. I completely agree that it's nonsensical, but this man himself is nonsensical.
One more thing.
So make your point quickly, because Steve.
Yeah, okay, so
let me get him out of time.
Susan Collins out of Maine is up for re-election in 2026, but she's an old lady, and there has to be, I'm hoping that she's known for saying brave things and then buckling and going along with all the rest of the Republicans. But if she's old enough that she's not going to run for re-election, maybe she'll get brave and she'll actually stand up to some of the excesses that Trump expects from the Senate.
Hey, Steve, and then I've got a quick question for Rick and everything. But Steve, you've joined us. I know you're coming in.
Well, it's good to see my good friend Jan. How you doing, brother Jan? It's good. Jan Cromartie? Good to see you, sir.
How you doing, Rick?
Yeah. So real quickly, I'm leaving for a few weeks, so just wanted to let you all know that. I guess my main thing, people are talking about the tariffs and the tariff wars and what that's going to mean. Trump saying on the first day, China and Mexico also retaliating. In North Carolina, what's happening is the legislature grabbing as much of Josh Stein's power as possible, and even the attorney general. So he'll only be able to go to court with the Republicans, and the Board of Elections appointments goes to the state auditor, who's a Republican. So anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And the Justice Allison Riggs is up by 50 votes. So it's a close race. But nationally, I think that these appointments are, they're not going to change. I think Trump's really trying to be disruptive here, and he certainly is good at doing that. And we'll just have to see now what this means moving forward for the United States. But we have to accept he's the president, and I think we can't cry with spilled milk as Democrats. We lost big, and now I think it's time to identify a strategy for 2026 and 2028. And I know Jan Cromartie's involved with a lot of races locally. He probably has observed what was going on in the polls this year. But anyway, that's my take.
I appreciate that and everything. Before we get ready to get out of here, and I know
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Hopefully, actually, Mayor Pro Tem Steve Rao, I was actually in Milwaukee working the campaign from August the 20th to November the 8th. So I just recently got back here in the state of North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I was keeping up with everything that going on with Allison Riggs, because I'm with the Durham Committee on Affairs of Black People, as well as the other political action committee, the People Line. So I was actually given to a couple of those people's campaign. Question for you: you'll probably be, and you don't want to say, you probably be working for the governor, Josh Stein. You're a great man.
Well, I'm keeping my. I'm going to run for the Wake County Commission instead. I'm waiting to hear from him, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet. So we'll see.
I work hard.
A lot of people in line to work for him. So, but
he might get a job there.
I'm around.
Yeah, I know
We'll see.
I support him and everything. Just
it's a
really
long
quickly, Rick, before we get out of here and everything, and it is a long line for jobs with Josh Shine and everything. But before we get out of here, and we got the Ukraine show coming up at 11 o'clock. But what is your thoughts around these social media influencers that do silly things and everything? Because apparently, Rick, a social media influencer, recently was arrested after she filmed herself getting ready to steal from a store using a fake barcode. So I've noticed a lot of times folks want to do stunts and then they get themselves in trouble. So what's your take on social media influencers and some of the crazy things that they do? We even got
I generally respect it. If I had bigger balls, I would be and wasn't so lazy, I would be doing silly crap, because it's the path to, people get TV shows, they get off of doing silly crap, they get modeling contracts. It's a modern business. Being hot or an idiot on social media is a big deal.
Mark, all I want to say is welcome to the internet. Is this your first time here?
Yeah, and I'm back to the election. Steve said Trump won big, and he did. Trump has the Supreme Court, the presidency, the House, and the Senate. But the Democrats also lost small. They only lost the popular vote by less than 1.6%. So it's frustrating because Trump has all the levers of government, yet for every 31 people who voted for Trump, 30 people voted for Harris. It's pretty equally divided, but the consequences of that narrow defeat are going to kick our ass.
I think it's Trump.
But did Steve just bring up a very interesting point, which I heard a candidate in one of our rural North Carolina areas say the same thing. So a lot of times people are wondering whether your vote counts and everything. But if we are in a race, and if I heard you correctly, Steve, it's 50 votes separating somebody and everything, then those votes count big time.
Every 2 years.
I've never heard an election that close. 50 votes. I mean, God.
Like Allison Riggs and Mary, 50 votes, undecided. Hopefully she'll pull this out.
I hope so.
If Trump got all Senate, the House, and I think he can get a little overzealous, and it can backfire in his face, having all this power.
I agree. I completely agree, because I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse, because a lot of people, some didn't vote because of we did the I don't want either one. My vote doesn't count.
There was also protest votes, like people in that were supportive of Palestine that probably sat on their hands too because they were protesting against certain stances and everything. So there were also protest votes as well.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse, and I don't think. I mean, I think yes, coming up with a strategy, a better messaging strategy, Steve, that should be the key, because truthfully, if you they did the study on the blind polling on the actual policies. It wasn't the policies. It's the messaging. It's the fact that it was an incoming president. You didn't have time. And we started at the beginning. There was a short message. It hit. It was punching. By the end, it fell back into the same trap that the Democrats do all the time, wanting to get into this nuanced argument. Nuanced arguments in this day and age are not going to win you votes. You have to have punchy.
The Trump administration. Yeah, I didn't mean to be rude. Trump administration, from what Von Jones said on CNN. They use a lot of podcasts and streaming. And he felt that the Democrats thought they were dealing with idiots, and he is a Democrat. But he said, actually, it wasn't the Republicans that were idiots, in his opinion. It was the Democrats, because they were smart, and they used their money smart with streaming and podcasts. And that's what Steve Rao can do when he runs for Wake County Commissioner. He can use a lot of podcasts and streaming, because it reaches more people, like Hulu and things like that. It reaches more people, and it's less expensive. I tried to do that with 2 candidates, and they didn't use it, and they lost.
And from what I understand, it's what?
Yeah, 40%? I think you have to get more disruptive and digital. We're definitely working on it. With coming up with a whole new way of reaching out to folks for sure. So
And 40,
people
what they
get
say,
tired of the old-
40% of the younger market is utilizing social media and the influencers as their news organizations and everything else. So yeah, you got to hit streaming. You got to hit just social media hard as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, I want to hear Shaq.
Have a great
We got-
Thanksgiving, everybody. I'll see you in a few weeks. And Jan,
Shaq,
please
I
ping
want to
me.
hear
I
about
just
Trump and
sent
the
you a
market.
message on the thing, and we'll get together when I get back. in a
Hit
few
Bob
weeks.
Evans. Hit Bob Evans. That's what I'm getting. Bob Evans, $99.99 for 6 to serve. So I'll be having it here. I'm staying at the Spring Hill on Mangum Street for to the 22nd of December until they correct my apartment. So anyone want to bring me some turkey and ham extra, I'll be obliged.
All right, so let's hear about what Shaq thinks about Trump, tariffs, and the market.
Well, I don't think I've got time. We're already over the hour. I don't
Yeah,
know
but
why they left
still,
it backstage. Yeah, but then they're just going to come on and take us back off. So I'll just stick to Trump and Democrat policy. I don't think the podcasts and all of that are the issue. I don't think it's a matter that Democrats didn't get their message out. They did. I think the problem is that Democrats are refusing, and we see this with the Labor Party in the UK and Australia. They are refusing to acknowledge what everybody can see, right? Like, I'll just take inflation, for example. What was the point of everybody saying that inflation either wasn't happening or it was transitory? What people take away from that is that the government is out of touch. When they release something, was it last Christmas or, last Thanksgiving or something that said, that hot dog buns were down 13 cents. This sort of thing doesn't work very well. And I think that Democrats are going to have to understand that they need to be responsive to what people are saying to them, okay? The idea that, she ran a fantastic campaign. No, she didn't. She didn't run a very good campaign. And you don't have to listen to hard right-wing Republicans. Listen to your own party. There are people within your own party that were very critical of there not being an open convention. They were very critical of the way that she conducted the campaign. They were very critical of the fact that, mass media were very, very biased towards her and very, very biased against Donald Trump. And so he went and had, okay, well, you can shake your head, Jacoby. What's your reason? If you guys are going to go through the next 4 years saying that it's racism and misogyny that caused this, if that's the plan, it's not going to resonate with people. You can't call people names and tell them that they're horrible, terrible people and then expect them to go, you know what, you're right, I'm a piece of shit and I should come to your side and you can tell me more about how terrible I am. That's not human nature.
Did you want me to
Democrats are doing the same thing. So
Bernie
don't
Sanders-
single anyone out.
Did you
Bernie
want me to
Sanders,
answer your question
Hey,
that you just asked real
I
quick?
didn't ask you a question. Bernie Sanders has actually said straight after the election that Democrats have turned their back on the working class. So yes, I think there's a messaging problem. Yes, I think there's a strategy problem. But most importantly, I think Democrats have got to get off their high horse a little bit and get back to those core issues that people care about, that people are telling Democrats. Otherwise, Democrats are going to suffer more losses in the future. And that's not good. You need to have two important political parties that act as a counterbalance to each other. And this election result has been pretty devastating, I think.
So let me ask you a quick question real quick, Shaq. Shaq, did Donald Trump run a great campaign?
I think he did, given the resources he had, yes.
So I would say differently because of the racism and everything else that came out of the campaign. So on top of that, when we're talking about how, I think Kamala Harris's campaign was run a lot smoother than Donald Trump's. Many people agree with that. And based on how things came out of not only the debates and so on and so forth, I notice how you're saying that Democrats need to stop calling people names. No Democrat called Republicans names. Democrats talked about Donald Trump and the individuals around Donald Trump. They didn't call Republicans. However, Donald Trump did say many things about the Democrats and many things about liberals, called them the enemy within, called them pedophiles, called them all different names, but yet that's okay because that came from the side that you're supporting. What I'm trying to
I'm not supporting anyone. I'm not American.
What
I'm
I'm
not
trying to
supporting
explain
anyone.
to you is What I'm trying to explain to you is there are things that Kamala Harris did that were bad. Yes, she should have gone on the Joe Rogan campaign. She should have actually done some other things that she did not. There were problems. It was not a perfect campaign. Did she run a good campaign? Yes. Saying that doesn't mean it was perfect. Donald Trump's campaign did everything conceivably wrong, from that race all the way to culminating to a racist rally in the middle of Madison Square Gardens, where you had not only just the comic that got on stage saying racist jokes, but then you had other individuals that got on the stage doing
let me just hang on. Okay, let me just come back.
National security people support.
Let me just come back to Toby. Okay, I get it. I get your point about
Jack, you asked me a question. I'm trying to answer you. What happened? And so I know you don't agree with what happened because you have your mind stuck that we didn't listen to. Again, this is why I point to you and say, as I just pointed out to Steve, there was a blind poll done on economic policy. In that blind poll around economic policy, Kamala Harris won. That's not telling me that they didn't listen or they didn't have the policies. That's telling me there was something else. That's something else. When you put the faces up, you see this individual and you're going to vote for them. Why? There are multiple reasons. And we already established based on a blind poll that it is not what they were saying economically. That means it has to do with their image, their face, who they are. There's some background. People didn't vote for the incumbent. That was already happening across the globe. So you bake that in the cake. Misogyny was there. People said this on camera that they weren't going to vote for a woman. That is baked in the cake. We are a patriarchy. If you look at the actual demographic split, so there were issues there. It's not the main issue, no, but it is one of the issues. In a tight election, when we're talking about 50 votes, that happened. So we cannot just ignore it. And then when we're looking forward,
can I speak? You've been going on for a bit now, but can I just come in with a couple of things?
Joey, let me end with a great analogy, and I've got to go. So Mark, just disengage me from the things. I can't find the prompt on my thing, but I think what I think, despite all of the negatives of Donald Trump, I will say there's one thing we can learn from him, is that, and I'm going to use an analogy from one of the best I spoke at Wake Tech's commencement, but I was listening to a lot of commencement addresses, and the best one is Roger Federer. And what Federer said to the students at Dartmouth is that he won 80% of his matches, but he only won 54% of the points. So even the greatest tennis players are going to lose every almost 2 to 3 points a game, and they're going to have to put the point behind them and to play the next point. And that's what Donald Trump was able to do. I mean, regardless, think about it. He was able to come back from the doldrums to win the presidency again. So the Democrats keep going back and looking back. That, like Federer said, you play every point with intensity. But when that point is over, you go to the next point. And when that point is over, you go to the next point. And you're going to win that.
What I'm saying from my Democrat friends in the United States is that they are.
Just to point out real quick, Steve, in terms of going back, remember, Donald Trump ran on a campaign about what happened in the past, about 2020 and everything else, and his illness and all the other stuff in the past. Kamala Harris was running on, this is what we're going to do in the future. So I get the point that you're making, but I think we have to honestly look at what the people were running on and what the messaging was. For example, we keep talking about the culture wars. The only individual who put money into the culture wars was Donald Trump. He spent more money on that than he did on even his economic message. So when we're talking, it wasn't even nobody on the Kamala Harris wasn't talking about trans issues. It was what Donald Trump put out there in messaging. So I get what you're trying to say, but truthfully speaking, putting stuff behind is what the Democrat Party tried to do because they had the incumbent party that incumbent weight that they were having to fight through. And that's where, honestly, that's where I'll agree with you, is that we were stuck on the incumbency of Biden. And that's
Am I allowed to speak? Am I allowed to speak now?
Shaquille,
now may I speak?
Shaquille,
Are we sure?
Yes.
What I hear from my Democrat friends is a refusal, and I've been saying this all through the election campaign, is a refusal to accept any criticism whatsoever and then course correct. There is just constant excuses made and constant demonization of the other side. Now, if we go back and have a look at the Joe Biden debate, prior to that, every time there was any criticism that Joe Biden looked old, looked tired, looked like he was, perhaps in some level of cognitive decline, that was resisted, not just by panelists on this show, it was resisted by mainstream media. Joe Scarborough said that this was the best version of Biden ever. Nobody in their right mind would have believed that. So it's that kind of thing that then there's a debate where it is clearly obvious to everybody that Joe Biden is not capable of being the leader of the free world. Democrats then moved to replace him. What was the criticism? Forget about the criticism from the Republican side. What was the criticism coming from within Democrats at the time? They said, we think that there should have been an open convention. Now, since then, since the election's over, Nancy Pelosi said that the Democrats' hand were kind of forced because of Joe Biden's endorsement of Kamala Harris. Okay? Secondly, what the criticism was, including from mainstream media, was that she didn't hold a press conference. That, in fact, the entire election campaign's now over and she didn't hold a press conference. That she didn't sit down and actually do a proper interview for a month. Now, what she actually had was fantastic. She got a great bump in support and popularity after the DNC. She should have been doing everything she could to keep that momentum up. And I don't think that she did that very well. I really don't think she did that very well. People said that she won the debate. Now, I'm not going to argue with that. I don't think that she did. That's my view. But I fully acknowledge that even people on the political right side, my side of politics, don't agree with me. They all say that he won it. The reason why I say that they all say that she won it. The reason why I say he won it was because at that point she hadn't had a press conference and her plan for the future was not very well articulated. So the debate was a great time for her to be able to do that. I don't think that she did it very well. In fact, I think that she spent a bit more time trying to get under Donald Trump's skin. She was successful in getting under Donald Trump's skin, and she really threw him off kilter and got him to say a few silly things and react to the comment about people getting bored from exhaustion at his rallies. But it really didn't endear her to the American people. Now, again, you can take some of that criticism and say, okay, look, this is what people are telling us. They're unhappy about the border. They're unhappy about cost of living pressures. They're unhappy that it doesn't appear that the political leadership of the Democrats are prepared to be responsive, are prepared to accept any criticism of their policies. You can accept that and then change course, or you can keep doing what you've been doing. My suggestion, and I've got no skin in this game, but my suggestion to Democrats is that if they want to have success in 2028, it would be helpful to them if they don't spend the next 4 years demonizing Donald Trump and his supporters, that they don't sit there nitpicking on every kind of policy position that he has or his cabinet picks, but they actually start talking about why their plans would be better and what they're intending to do, okay, and actually connecting with the American people. This is not a great moment for Democrats. It'll pass, but it will pass much more quickly if they can get back in touch with the people. What Donald Trump has been able to do as a populist is actually expand his connection over a much broader group of people than would typically vote for the Republicans. He's going to be gone in 4 years. And it's unlikely that somebody with his kind of, behavior and bombastic nature is likely to replace him. So, Democrats need to just get somebody with charm and charisma and, all of that kind of stuff and be a real leader. You're not going to do that by just calling everybody names and dismissing people.
Before you answer, Jacoby, and we're getting ready to wrap because I've got the other show going on. That's just exactly where I disappeared to. But before you answer, I would argue that one of the other populist candidates has literally been doing what you say that they should be doing, because I've brought it up several times on this show and this network that Reverend Barber, who I consider to be a populist as well, has said that they made a mistake by not going to rural North Carolina, just using North Carolina as an example, and that they did not do a good job of addressing some of the issues that you are saying needed to be addressed. And some people have even pushed back on him because he even says that he is not a Democrat or Republican, but he is more of an independent. And of course, a lot of times reverends will have to say that because of the nature of
if you look at voting patterns, her numbers against almost every key demographic, her voting numbers
out here. I can't find the thing on my computer. I got too many prompts open. Just boot me out. Thank you.
Okay.
See you, Steve. See you next year.
I'll see you next year, guys.
All right.
If you have a look at the voting turnout and voting support for her across almost every key demographic, it declined. Now, what do people say? Well, she still got the majority of black men. Yes, she did, but there was a large decline over what those votes were in 2020, what those votes were for Obama. You know, there was a decline. And then people say, well, it's because of misogyny. I mean, you know, okay, well, white women. People said in the lead up to this debate, in the lead up to this election, everybody was talking about abortion and how big an issue that was going to be. I sat here and Jacoby did his usual thing of shaking his head when I was speaking. And I said, I don't think abortion is going to have the effect that you guys are saying it's going to have, because when you look at the numbers, here is the percentage of women that say it's their most important issue. And I broke it down in age groups, etc. I also said that Republican women are more enthusiastic about voting than Democrat women are, based on what the polls are showing. And you guys all shook your heads. No, it's not happening. It's not happening. That's not true. It's going to be this big deal. But yet, the majority of white women in America voted for Republicans. And then it was like, well, it's internalized misogyny. No, they actually told you in advance for months. They told you and they told the pollsters what their most important issues were. And immigration and the open border, right? Americans were screaming about this for years, and they were ignored. And when someone like Governor Abbott from Texas says, look, we're completely overrun, we can't handle this. If you think it's such a good idea, let me ship them to you. That started to open people's eyes to how big of an issue it is. And it became one of the top 2 issues. So to dismiss all of that and say that the reason she didn't win was because she was a black woman, I think that's very dismissive, and it's going to make people think you're not listening.
So this is why I say you don't listen. You're not listening at all. And this is actually pretty typical of why we get into these back and forths. I never said it was the only issue. Never. But you're trying to make it out as if I said it was the only issue. But again, let me point out to you multiple reasons of why there was a depressed vote. Because one, you had...
You've told me, Jacoby. You've told me. I've heard you.
Let me finish.
You've told me all the reasons.
Let me finish. So again, you tried to point out you try to say that it's only this single issue. Yes, abortion played a role in this election. It did. It just did. But white men showed out in it more for Donald Trump than actually overplayed that particular piece of it. And that support helped him. But you also have to look at why was there a smaller vote. So you tried to point out going into the debate, nobody was saying anything about Joe Biden. No, what was pointed out to you was the legitimate fact that no actual other president in our modern history has been primaried the way that you're asking that primary to go. Joe Biden, in his election speech, when he first got elected, said that he was just going to be a transition. He decided to stay. So there was no primary because he decided to stay out of respect and tradition of the presidency. That happened when Donald Trump was even floundering coming into that actual battle between he and actual Biden. So he was supposed to be primaried at the time, but nobody primaried him. So again, based out of tradition and history, there was a depressed vote because people were actually
not quite what I said.
That is a fact. It is a fact.
That's not quite what I said about him being primary.
Shaq. I'm trying to explain.
Yes, but that's not quite what I said. That's all I'm saying. That's not what I said about primary.
I'm trying to explain because you tried to point out.
No, what you're trying to do is you're trying to lecture me, and and
Because
you're
you just
doing so in
lectured
quite a
me.
condescending
You just
way.
lectured me, so I would like to return the favor. So again, you started out with the idea of, okay, well, everybody in the world was telling everybody about Biden and they should have gotten rid of Biden and this and that. You started out with that, and I'm paraphrasing. So I'm pointing out to you.
Just 1 second. I'm going off camera, but I'm still listening. Okay.
Okay.
I'm still here.
So I'm pointing out to you that the historical fact, that's why Biden was there. People were not attacking Biden so bad, I guess the way that you wanted people to attack Biden. Regardless of whatever happened, it was already Donald Trump in the actual main position, or the Republican head. Nothing anybody did was going to get anybody who was already voting for Donald Trump to swing over. That was already set in stone. So to try and placate, oh, well, we're going to kick them out. And, oh, nobody wanted an open convention, because, again, if you had an open convention, you would have less time than what Kamala Harris did to actually put everything together as much as she did. So an open convention was not going to happen. That's splitting the party. No Democrat wanted that. Everybody wanted to get through this as fast as possible. Every Democrat, most Democrats wanted to actually figure out who it was going to be. The Democrats landed on Kamala Harris based on numerous reasons. That's why everybody backed out. Joe Biden didn't even, he was one of the last individuals to actually endorse Kamala Harris. So it wasn't we had our hands tied. Nobody had their hands tied. That's what you said, is that, oh, the Democrats felt their hands are tied because Kamala Harris was endorsed by Joe Biden. That's what you just stated. I'm saying nobody did that. So once Kamala Harris got into that position,
history written by the left is so distorted.
We have videotape. So please,
Nancy Pelosi just said it like 2 weeks ago, straight after the election.
You what you stated.
Okay, so you're saying Nancy Pelosi's wrong?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, take it up with Nancy Pelosi then. Don't take it up with me. Go give her the lecture.
So
what you're doing is
you're continue interrupting, or can I finish? Can I finish? So again, already having a depressed electorate that didn't even want to come out for Joe Biden in the first place. Donald Trump was already up by it was like 70, 80 to 20% for Joe Biden even coming out. So you had a depressed electorate that didn't even want to come out. So Kamala Harris had to run a lot of campaigns and rah-rah moments just to get people back into the fold and introduce herself. So I can understand, yes, doing extra press conferences would have helped. Sure. But that's not really a criticism that you're wanting to drop in. You're wanting to drop in, oh, well, her campaign sucked and they kept name calling. Nobody was name calling. They were trying to introduce themselves to the market and running a joyous campaign and never really even dropped Donald Trump's name. But you're going on this idea that she did. She didn't. So as the campaign ran on, she had to basically hype people up without doing all this stuff. At the actual debate, she put out more policy than Donald Trump did, but you said nothing about that. You said, oh, well, she didn't do anything. She didn't give any policy. Donald Trump still hadn't given it a healthcare policy. Concepts of a plan is not a plan. His only economic plan is, I'm going to do tariffs and I'm going to do taxes. What taxes are you talking about? I don't know, but I'm going to do them. Tariffs, I'm going to do it. And so he has no economic plan. And this is why I get back to the whole point. The actual messaging that was run was what Donald Trump won on. Donald Trump ran on a campaign of hatred of others. He spent a lot of money on, hey, we're going to hate the transgender community. Hey, we're going to hate the immigrants that are coming to steal your jobs. That's what he ran on. He didn't run on economic policy. He did not. He took money from the economic policy ads and put them on transgender issues. So culture wars, coming back to, is what he ran on. It's the same thing when people pointed out what you're complaining, that you're calling everybody names. Again, nobody called you a name. Nobody called others a name. What ended up happening is you had Donald Trump calling every Democrat, every liberal, anybody who didn't vote for him a name. You said nothing. You said, oh, well, it's because, they called him a fascist. Well, Donald Trump called everybody a fascist from the podium multiple times. Oh, that didn't really happen. So when you're literally trying to sanitize what this man is saying, you have to realize that it's recognized. You have to understand that there's more than just, yes, misogyny played a small role, race played a small role, timing played a small role, messaging played a small role, depressed electorates played a small role. There were a lot of things that culminated that actually hurt her, but it wasn't actually the policies themselves, because they did the blind test on the poll, and those blind tests show that her policies were there.
Quick question before you respond, Shaquille, and then I'm going to.
Well, I got to run the carpool. We can sit here all day again.
Quick question before you respond. This is a question for both of you and Jacoby. But one of the things, because we have another show on the network, and I don't necessarily agree with what she said, but she said that a lot of African American women are now going to sit on the sideline in politics, and that they should sit on the sideline in politics because the white women kind of bailed on them. Now, that's Dr. Anthony's view on the All Around Show, and I don't know that I necessarily agree with her, but I have seen, including in the Boston Herald, where folks have said this, which could be a problem for the Democratic Party if folks decide to sit on the sidelines. So I just wanted your take on that, Jacoby, because there is a thing that's going out there.
You're going to go back to Jacoby again. He's just spoken for like 9 minutes.
I've got to leave real quick, Shaq, so you can take over after. I'm just going to say this
real
fast.
You go for it, Jacoby. You go for it. Then I'll respond while you're not even here to you. That's brilliant.
Me, so it'll just take a quick second. Mark, what you're saying is spot on. People sat on their hands. People were upset. That's part of that depressed electorate. People didn't want particular things, and they were upset about Joe Biden. And then they were upset about, Kamala Harris. They're upset about what's going on in Palestine, and they're upset about what's happening in Gaza. So they decided to sit on their hands for their own particular reasons. And the Democrat Party or liberals or whomever else could not reach them. And that was part of that problem of that depressed electorate. And it's hard to reach them because it begins to get into the single issue voting, and the single issue voting, that single issue voter is tough to reach sometimes, because that single issue may be contradicted by another issue that you've got to use. As a matter of fact, Elon Musk paid a ton of money to spend on that, to actually campaign on that to help Donald Trump, because he actually hired out a separate it was a separate website or a separate company that actually spent money in Muslim areas to campaign that Kamala Harris was so pro-Israel she was going to hurt the people of Gaza, and they spent all this a similar amount of money in Jewish areas saying Kamala Harris was so pro-Palestinian that she's going to hurt Israel. So that's what Elon Musk did on that single issue voter. And he got some of those people to move towards Trump due to that. But it's hard dealing with, again, that single issue voter, to get them off their hands, because it becomes contradictory to try and appease everyone. But yeah, so yeah, she didn't reach everyone that she should have or could have, because again, it gets out of messaging. And what blocks do you reach? So like rural Rem Barber talking about going to rural North Carolina, spot on, and she should have done. Steve talking about going to the Indian community, she should have done. But again, contradictory. Where is she going to pull from pockets, and how much time does she have? So it just got tough.
Well, I think it's going to be problematic if the sisters abandon whoever the Democratic candidate is next time around. But
they need to start now. That's when they need to start, because Donald Trump spent all of Joe Biden, well, actually all of his presidency campaigning and all of Joe Biden's campaigning. And he actually, I think it was his son-in-law, somebody in his family was campaigning in the Muslim community because they had some connection there, I think it was, and that helped him out because he already had made inroads. So if they start now, they have the opportunity to make inroads, make their name known. This is what we're doing. This is what we're offering. These are the policies, and that's that listening Shaq is talking about, and not name calling. So take it away, Shaq. I gotta go carpool. Y'all have fun. I'll see you later.
Shaquille, you had something you wanted to add in response to
This is a person that in a one-on-one conversation with me last week, when I didn't actually have the time, but I ended up spending 3 hours, tries to tell me how conversations should work, makes me sit here for that length of time while he speaks and then leaves. Look, a couple of things. One, he sort of responded to something that wasn't really the point that I was making. I never said that Joe Biden should have been primary. What I said was that Joe Biden should have left earlier, and the Democrats should have recognized that this was going to be a problem and sat down with Joe Biden earlier and strategized about this. They chose not to. Now, whether that be because Joe Biden chose not to, or whether that be because Democrats chose not to, or a combination of the above, they didn't do it. And the media then ran cover and started to say things that were really insulting to people's intelligence. When he was in Europe with all the world leaders there, and he's wandered off, and the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, had to go and get him. And then everyone says, oh, it's just a cheap fake. No, it's not. That's what happened. Okay, we've all been watching this decline in him for years. And I think it's that dishonesty or that gaslighting that people find so objectionable. So then once the situation has occurred, for whatever reasons and explanations that people like Jacoby want to give for why Kamala Harris became the nominee, the Democrats were told, like, over and over and over again, not again, forget about Republicans. They were told by even their own side. Moderate Democrats were saying, listen, we want to hear more from her. We want an explanation as to what's happened to you. We want some acknowledgement that things had gone wrong. And that was never given. So, I don't blame black women for feeling like they, what's the point of even trying at this point? I don't blame them if they believe what they're being told. And what they're being told is that the reason she didn't win was as a result of her being a black woman. I don't accept that. I don't think that that's true. Certainly, it's not true in other Western countries that don't have a problem with electing black women. It's not a woman problem because there are a number of Republican states that have elected female governors, right? All Republican states have voted for black women to be in varying roles within government. So why would this one be different? So the question is it more because she's a black woman, or is it more because of the reasons that people told Democrats that they were unhappy? My suggestion is that it's more because the policies being proposed they were unhappy with. And one of her surrogates, I forget his name now, the Shark Tank guy from that owns the Dallas Cowboys or Dallas Mavericks, wherever it is.
Mark Cuban,
that's him. When she talked about a tax on unrealized capital gains, he came out and rolled that back and said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. Okay. Why didn't she do that? Or why didn't she come out and give a better explanation as to what her thinking was in relation to that policy? It was one of those things that just sat there hanging. Okay. And you even had people in Silicon Valley expressing some real concern about some of these sorts of changes that were being proposed. So again, all I'm saying is if Democrats want to go into this with the attitude that the country is irreparably racist and misogynistic, and the majority of Americans are racist and misogynistic, well, you can do that. But I don't think that is a winning formula that's going to lead to electoral success in future elections. And, I'll just say the last thing that I want to say today is what I have said before. I've traveled all over the world. Americans seem to have a very dim view of other Americans, and I think that that's largely because of the politicization and the polarization that has occurred largely actually as a result of media. But I can tell you, after having traveled throughout the world, Americans are some of the most generous, caring, and friendly people that I've met in any country I've ever been to. And I wish that Americans could see each other through those eyes instead of looking at each other as enemies. So if you think that there's a chance that there's misogyny and racism at play, or there's a chance that it's policy or other issues, I would say that you should default to it being other issues and not racism and misogyny, because I'm not trying to be dismissive that these things can and do occur, but I don't think it occurs anywhere near the levels at which people think they do. Americans are great people. You have a wonderful country, and just come back together. I've been saying that, so I'm not just saying that now. I've been saying that for years. Okay, ever since I first started coming to the United States, some 6, 7 years ago. So, give it up a bit, relax a bit.
The argument, Shaquille, is that I've heard even from Dr. Anthony, and like I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything that she says, even though I host a church, like I host a number of shows.
It's a little bit hard for me to hear you. You're a bit muffled, Mark. I'm sorry.
Hold on. You good?
Well, just so there's no dead air, I'll just continue talking until you come back. I wish that Americans would see that in each other, because I think America could go on to even greater things if they could see that in each other, rather than reducing their opposition to.
Just really quickly, and then we'll do it at the end, because we, like you said earlier, we went over, but that's no problem. I don't mind doing that. I do that regularly on my own shows. But one of the things that I was going to say that Dr. Anthony has brought up, and I don't necessarily agree with her on this, is this notion that Black women basically came out en masse, that they are the bulk of support and a lot of support for the Democratic Party, and that they feel, and this is kind of paraphrasing her attitude, that white women basically voted against their own interests and voted en masse for Trump and everything, because I think it came out to like 50+% that voted for Trump and 48%, even though they had earlier said that wasn't going to be the case. So the notion is that Black women, hold a second, I'm paraphrasing, the notion for Black women is that they feel that they got stabbed in the back, that they were going to get like dual support from the white women of the world as well, and then they feel like they got stabbed in the back, and therefore they're
but
like, so we're not going to deal with y'all, and we're just not going to deal with politics.
But that comes back to the same core issue, right? Why should somebody else say to somebody else that you're voting against your best interests, right? People prioritize things differently. Now, I assume that a lot of Black women voted for Kamala Harris because she was Black. I don't think that the people who didn't vote for her, I don't think the majority of them didn't vote for her because she's a Black woman. I think that they didn't vote for her because the other side had policies that were more in line with what they wanted to see in the future. Okay, so if it was actually true that people were only voting for Donald Trump because they didn't want a Black woman there, but they actually really don't like his policies and what he's trying to do, you would expect there to be a massive drop in his popularity. Now, if you actually have a look at his popularity after 2016, it did not increase after he became the president-elect. It has increased dramatically in this election. That would be an indicator that what he's planning on doing, and he started talking about things like a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada. He started talking about very seriously with Homan, talking about mass deportation and state people, state governors who suggest that they'd prefer to go to jail. Well, fine, we'll lock you up in jail. If you interfere with federal law. He's come out and said those sorts of things, and it actually hasn't resulted in a decrease in his support and popularity, but it's actually resulted in an increase. That, I think, would be a pretty clear indicator that people actually were voting for policies here and the vision that he had articulated, as opposed to voting against Kamala Harris because she was a Black woman. Okay, and some people may have voted against Kamala Harris because of the incumbency factor, the fact that they were very unhappy with the way the country has developed over the last 4 years, almost 4 years. So, look, as I said, I do feel that Democrats, if they want to have any hope of winning future elections, or the Democrats have held 16 of the last 20 years. If they don't want that to be reversed and have the Republicans have 16 of the next 20, my suggestion is that they need to stop this idea that, hey, everybody's racist and everybody's transphobic and all that kind of stuff, and just reconnect with people and just understand that people have different ideas, to different understandings with the trans community. People have concerns and they feel like they haven't been able to express them without being called names. That with immigration, they're not trying to be racist, but they feel as though resources are being diverted away from them and they need them. These are all reasonable things for people to be concerned about. Address them. Don't ignore them. Don't be dismissive of them. Address them.
Now, I can see what you're saying in that. And I mean, Democrats and Republicans have been good at coalition building. And I think that coalition building is what has to be done in order to win, even if it's in 26 or 28 or whenever. And that's for both parties. And yes, I do think the Republicans have done a better job of increasing their base of support and not just depending on what was a traditional base of support and everything. So that I would agree with you on and everything like that. But I would also say that this notion, and this is where I sometimes get upset at some of my progressive friends and everything, that if you lose, that means that you are then going to turn your back to what can be allies. Because even on one of our other shows, I've heard people say that basically, like, if the immigrants come and get you, to play back to that video that Kim played a couple of days ago, that we're just going to ignore you because you did not have our back when we needed your back, so therefore we won't have your back when you need ours. And I think that is kind of petty to some degree and everything. But I've heard that from a lot of folks where they've basically been like, if there was like an alliance, say, with the Black and the Hispanic community, if the Hispanics are mass deported, a lot of sisters are saying, we're not going to say anything about it because you were not there when we stood up for when we needed you to stand up for us.
Yeah, but this is the core point of identity politics, right? That's like the majority of Hispanics did vote for Democrats, right? It's just that there was a big drop in the group.
Right.
So, the Black community, I think, would be ill-advised to go down that path because the Black community doesn't want to be treated as if they're all a big monolith, right? But that'll also come back to my point that I've made on other shows, where when people in the Black community talk about what's in their best interests, right, and as if it's heresy, if somebody who has the same skin color and ethnicity doesn't do what you want them to do, right, you turn your back on them. It can actually be quite nasty. And look, for all the criticism of Clarence Thomas, look at the sorts of things that are said about Thomas Sowell. Now, what's Thomas Sowell done wrong in his life? He's never really wielded any great political power. He's an economist. He's an academic. He's spent his entire life in academia. And at the ripe old age of, I think he's 92 or 93 years old, he's at the Hoover Institute, Stanford. And, he comes out and makes his commentary. Not very many people watch Hoover Institute stuff because it's, it's economics, which I'm interested in, but most people are going to find quite boring. And people are constantly, saying how horrible he is and what a traitor to the Black community he is. So it's not even about standing up for Black people. It's standing up for Black people only if they support Democrats. If they happen to say that they're not in support of Democrats or they believe something different, well, they're treated extremely nastily and extremely badly. And I think a lot of people are opening their eyes up to that at the moment. And I actually think that the way things are trending, there are going to be an increasing number of Black men who are going to start saying, you know what, I've actually had enough of this.
Yeah, I can see that, but you're killing it. I do need to end the show because I got to get to another one just really quickly. But in that same line and all along those lines, as I've told you before, and I've had him on, I think, one of my shows, maybe even, I haven't had him on World Edition yet, but I have also seen the opposite happen. Like you talk about Thomas Sowell and how he is treated as a Black conservative economist. But I can also tell you that my distant cousin, because I think he's either a second or third, something like that, he and his wife get a lot of pushback, and they get a lot of pushback from both progressives and conservatives because they have a notion that is not popular. He's a professor here at Duke, but Sandy Darity and his wife Kirsten Mullins are two of the leading voices for the notion of reparations and everything, and they get a lot of pushback, including from fellow reparationists and everything, because they are coming from the academic standpoint and they're bringing up facts and figures, and sometimes they think that is too academic or too highfalutin. They wanted more immediate solution and everything like that. But
I think that's a whole different debate. I can't see reparations as being a practical solution. To be honest with you, I think it would be too hard to work out how much money should be given to whom. I think that perhaps there are other things that you could do to try to improve the opportunities available to Blacks, especially those Blacks that are coming from impoverished backgrounds. But look, I just want to come back to immigration for a moment. What's happening in the United States is not particularly unique, other than the fact that people are coming across the southern border. Canada and Canadians are experiencing cost of living pressures and are complaining a lot about the mass immigration, especially from East Indians that have come into Canada. Okay. Now, Canada is normally a place that actually needs immigration. But when you actually have a look at what's happening in Canada, a lot of their economic growth has been as a result of immigration, as opposed to more natural and organic economic growth. And that does have a destabilizing effect on the economy. You are seeing complaints in the UK about mass immigration, and you've seen protests and riots in the UK. That, of course, is destabilizing for the UK. You're seeing a similar sort of rhetoric in mainstream Europe, in Germany, notably in Germany, where they've elected one of the most right-wing parties in recent history there. You've seen complaints about immigration in Sweden. You've seen complaints about immigration in the Netherlands, in France. So you're actually seeing a lot of complaints about this kind of stuff. In Spain and Venice, Italy, you see a lot of the locals talking about how tourism, not even immigration, but tourism is actually hurting them, because a lot of homes are being snapped up for Airbnbs and things like that, and they're not able to rent houses, and so the places that they've lived in for generations, they're being priced out of the market. So there are a lot of complaints. Now, look, when we talk about tourism, the argument is that, hey, it's foreign dollars that come in, they spend their money, and then they leave. But hey, if I can't go to a restaurant anymore because it's full of tourists that come in on a cruise ship every day, maybe that becomes a bit frustrating. So all I'm saying is that these things need to be tackled and addressed. So when government ignores people or says it's not happening, or just says, look, this is for your own good, just be quiet, that's going to lead to resentment. And I think that that's what you've seen in this election. And that's why, he's lost, Kamala Harris has lost all 7 of the swing states. She has lost the popular vote. I know that Rick Rosner said it was only by, a couple of percent. Well, that's pretty significant, because a Republican hasn't had the popular vote for a very long time now. So that is a pretty significant thing. And it's notable as well that she actually lost support even in some deep blue states. In some places, there were 40-point swings against her. I mean, that is a significant situation. And if you look at the map, and I know that these things, when you look at the map, it's exaggerated because of where the population is. But when you look at the map county by county and see all of the red counties across the country, including in New York and California and Oregon, etc., and you look at all of the red, and then you just look at these tiny little pockets of blue, okay, again, I appreciate that's misleading because of the high population density of some places, but it does show that across the overwhelming majority of the landmass in the United States, that people have not been happy with the last 4 years and have not been happy with what's happened with Kamala Harris. And look, Kamala Harris dropped out of the 2020 election. I think she was the first one out. Okay, she didn't get a single delegate, right? And she blamed racism and sexism for that back then. I don't think the Californians are racist and sexist, are they? But that's what she blamed. Now she loses this election, and the same thing. It's racism and sexism. No, I don't think it is. And again, I think that if that is the theory, what that's going to do is it's going to drive further division, because there's going to be people who are so insulted by that going into the next 4 years that in 2028, they're going to say, right, you're still not listening. You still just want to lecture us all the time. We're done with you. We're not coming back and voting for you again. Okay, that's the risk that you take. And then on the other side, you're going to have people who are even more hardened that America is in fact racist and sexist against them, and that's why they're not getting any progress. That the country has become more racist and sexist is what the idea is going to be, and that would be very disheartening for groups of people, especially black women. So, as I said, I think that this is a failure of leadership, and it should be called out as such.
I mean, but even I think it was 2 days ago that Adam Schiff says the entire Democratic Party bears the blame for the Harris loss, himself included, and definitely Biden's got some pressure and other things. There are folks like you're talking about, like Axelrod, that said that racism and sexism were partly to blame, but I don't think that they ever said that that was the only reason and everything. And even Pelosi, like you said earlier, blamed it on Biden's late exit and no open Democratic Party. So, I mean, there have been definitely various theories, and there have even been folks that are trying to figure out what her next step is going to be. And I think that yesterday I said that her advisors, because I think that was on Dr. Anthony's show, are saying, for her to run for governor, for her to run for president again in 4 years, depending on what goes on in the Trump election and everything.
I think that's just wishful thinking. I don't think that she's going to get the support of Democrats to run in 2028. There was a tremendous amount of money spent, and the fact that she still owes $20 million. She's not somebody who's ever been particularly well liked. She was one of the most unpopular VPs in modern American history. I think Democrats are going to want to have somebody who's a bit more polished and a bit more charismatic. Would she run as the governor of California? Look, maybe she could. I think that maybe her run in politics is probably about over. She's a wealthy person. I think she's worth 15 or 20 million or something last time I checked. So, why not just give it up and go and enjoy your life? Or get involved in some of the international think tanks and those sorts of things that a lot of former politicians get involved in. That would make more sense, I think. But I mean, that's a decision for her to make. Nancy Pelosi did say, I don't know why Jacoby keeps shaking his head about it. Nancy Pelosi did say that the Democrats were hamstrung by the fact that Biden endorsed her so quickly, right? So I'm not sure why there's some resistance that that's not what happened, because as I said, even Nancy Pelosi said it. But yeah, look, there's a lot of failures that have happened there, and I think that there's a lot of dismissiveness that Republicans and Donald Trump actually did try to deliver to the people what they were told the people wanted. There are some things that you could consider sounded racist. I don't think they were intended to be in some cases. In some cases, maybe they were. But Donald Trump, he ran. I think he ran a great campaign. I really do. He went to places where he didn't really have much of a shot of actually winning the state, but he still went there and campaigned. Coachella in California, for example, Madison Square Gardens, for example. He went on podcasts where he thought that he'd have a better opportunity to be able to talk for hours and hours in an interview, rather than having a quick combative interview with a mainstream media a person like he did with Katie Collins on CNN. So, yeah, as I said, I think that he did everything that he needed to do to be able to, get out there, and he's brought in people from outside of the traditional political arena to be part of his cabinet picks. So he's actually doing exactly what the anti-establishment, anti-establishment populist people want, and he's being criticised. And then Kamala Harris is out there saying, "Well, look, I've got all of the CEOs of the big corporations that are behind me, and look at how much money I've raised." Well, that's ended up backfiring, because then it's like, well, you've got all these big corporations. They're exactly the ones that we say are the problem if you're anti-establishment. You've got all these big celebrities that are out there, but we say that celebrities are out of touch and are living in their own dream world. And so bringing them out to do an endorsement, and like Cardi B, really, like, is anybody going to look at Cardi B and go, wow, that was so articulate. I'm really enthusiastic now. I'm going to change my mind about who I'm going to vote for. And then now we're hearing that some of these people were paid millions of dollars for their endorsements. It just doesn't look. It doesn't look like it was a genuine campaign with heartfelt things. It just looked like somebody who was trying to go for power. Now, again, I'm not going to beat up on Kamala Harris, because I think she had a difficult time to be able to put a campaign together as quickly as she did. But I can't see the Democrats wanting to give her a shot in 2028.
Well, it'd be interesting to see. I'm not a big fan, and I've told you that before, and I think that's what Jacoby was alluding to, the dog whistle kind of a campaign that sometimes Trump is known for. And like I said, to me, he is another version of P.T. Barnum. And I would definitely say he's a master salesman and a master showman. And I would never argue that with anybody. But sometimes there are dog whistles and issues that he throws out there that he knows will fire up his base and everything. So I think that's what he was alluding to, because I did get tired of
but again, Mark, the Democrats are doing that as well. They've been on the show earlier when I joined the first time, and I didn't leave out of frustration. By the way, I left because I was in the middle of something and the topic had been changed. You're coming out and saying, look, he's a failed businessman. He's had all these failures. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a con man. He's a racist. He's orange and all this sort of stuff. He's misogynistic and he's racist and blah, blah. So the thing is that that's been said for so long that it doesn't carry any real weight anymore. There are people that have already heard all of that are just going, yeah, whatever. You're just ganging up on him and nothing that he ever does is going to be right. Okay. And then there are other people that believe all of that who say, yeah, absolutely, he is, and I can't understand why anybody would vote for him. So that's kind of already been done. So just continually coming out and saying that. And look, again, look at the numbers. CNN has lost substantial viewership. MSNBC's numbers are so bad that even after Joe Scarborough and Mika went to Mar-a-Lago, their numbers fell even further. And now NBC is saying we need to decouple MSNBC from NBC because you're dragging down our ratings on NBC programs. This is a problem, right? And again, what's the problem? The problem is something that has been talked about now for almost 10 years, which is the bias of the media and the gaslighting of the media and the sort of looking at one person through rose-tinted glasses and looking at another person and turning everything that they say and everything that they do into a negative. People have grown tired of it, and people have wisened up to that. And the result is that people don't trust media anymore. And the result of it is you then go onto podcasts and you watch the podcast and you see that they've got substantially more viewers than what mainstream media has. And look, that's, again, not just something that happens in America. Joel Jamal rang me one day, and I happened to actually be not far from the city. And he said, hey, do you want to come in and do a reaction to one of the Australian programs? So I went to his studio and we did a reaction. Our commentary and our reaction to this broadcast got more viewership than the broadcast itself got. That should be a real warning sign for mainstream media that something's going wrong. And if you're not prepared to have people that can come in with different ideas and different perspectives and hear them out and debate the issues like the talking heads used to be, you're going to continue to hemorrhage viewership and hemorrhage revenue.
But mainstream media has had that problem for decades, ever since the people that I admired, like Ed Bradley and Walter Cronkite and others, left the media. And part of that is what we have talked about on the media show, which is this notion that it is several major corporations that pretty much own the media. And I don't care whether that's right or left, because it's pretty much owned by a variety of people on both platforms and everything. And it is pretty much left the objective mainstream media out of touch. And that I would agree with you on. And that's why podcasts are popular, even podcasts that have a focus of one sort or another. There's a reason that those Fox, not the Fox, but some of those even the Turning Point USA. But the Turning Point USA is popular, as is Midas Touch, because Midas Touch has, and that's on the left, has some very significant followings. But that's because people are frustrated by the way that the media is corporate owned, and it has been corporate owned for a while. There's a number of monopolies, but
this is where I would say to Democrats, if you're not going to listen to right-wing media, listen to some of those podcasts. Don't listen to the Young Turks. Right. Chet Uger, I don't agree with a lot of what he says. So there's some things that he says I do agree with him on. But you've got to give the man credit. He's a real fighter. He gets out there and quite forcefully puts out what he believes in. He actually came onto the PBD broadcast on election night when it was still technically, theoretically possible for Kamala Harris to win, but it was clear that she'd lost the race at that point. He came on in front of a room. He zoomed in or whatever, video conferenced in. But he was in front of a room full of people that were going to be very hostile towards his views, but he still showed up. And I think that that's admirable. Now, if you're going to get criticism from somebody, listen to them. I say that to the centre-right political parties. Don't worry, pay some attention to what the left says, but worry more about what your own side says. Because if the moderate people in your own party are complaining and are worried about stuff, don't ignore them. Because if you do, you may not win the people from the left. You may never win them, but you could lose us. And that's the problem I think the Democrats have. It's not so much that they're losing. They're not trying to win people from the right. They're not trying to win people from the MAGA crowd. What they're doing, though, is that they're actually hemorrhaging support for themselves. And that could be because support moves away from them and votes for the other side, or it could be that they just don't come out to vote. And either way, it is a problem.
Yeah,
in any case, I think we're at the second hour, so let's call it a day.
Let's call it a day, exactly. So go, get ready to end.